Hello, so it's time for everybody's favorite weekly series, which is what are the best comps on the current patch. This is going to be my recommendations for some reroll and non-reroll options for you on the current patch, which is 15.7 of set 15 of TFT. If you like my content, please make sure to like and subscribe. I am normally doing daily TFT guides, including stuff like tier lists, how to play different augments, as well as these ones where I either do patch notes review or I will tell you like my recommendations for climbing of what I think are the better comps on the current patch. For this patch, just as a brief overview of what is going on, I would say that it's like a split between playing a reroll line or trying to fast 9 or play around the 5 costs. Right now, I think the 4 costs are still in a very weird spot, and a lot of the comps that you would play with 4 costs are really 5 cost dependent anyways. So a lot of times you're either trying to find a reroll out that you're strong early game and you use that HP advantage to get a good top placement, or you're trying to giga cash out into like one of the high cost units and then play around that and make like a really strong board that basically can nuke everything very easily. So a lot of the focus on this is going to be around reroll because I think those are the more consistent, easier things to climb with. But then I'm also going to show you a bunch of 5 costs and fast 9 options because I think that's really important on the current patch. Very similar to last patch. If you played last patch, it's pretty much the exact same style of gameplay, but like a little bit more of like emerging just because like the reroll lines are a lot weaker because a lot of them got nerfed. Anyways, let's get started with the first comp. Katarina reroll. So Katarina reroll basically got a bunch of buffs in the sense that Leona and Yuumi got buffed. Which you might look at it and say, well, Leona Yuumi got buffed. Doesn't that mean Leona Yuumi is a really good 4 cost comp? It's like, yes, but Katarina was already a better version of that. So basically this comp got a strict buff in the most recent patch. Or that's a way you can look at it. But in general, you're playing around Katarina. Katarina, you usually want to play 7 Battle Academia. You can play Jace or Caitlyn, depending on your items, depending on your situation. But usually just go for extra frontline so that the Katarina has more time to like, you know, be in like that limbo of not being aggroed by the opponent's carries and stuff like that. But you usually play 7 Battle Academia because Katarina scales really well with those extra potential to do extra magic damage. And then you play the inter-team synergies of Bastion Prodigy because they're both really important for Katarina. Just some extra armor and some extra mana generation. And then you usually play Rise to fit in Executioner. At lower levels, you can play more Executioner, but usually you end up playing this. You reroll Katarina 3-star, and a lot of times you want to go for Rakan 3-star as well. And then Executioner active on the Katarina, obviously, with the Rise. With Katarina, what's really important is that because she's Executioner, you usually want to give her a crit glove related item. So something like a Hand of Justice works really well. Gives her a bunch of base stats, which she will then multiply with her crit, because like critting will give you like some sort of multiplicative scaling. So you get base stats from this. You get mana regen, which she loves to have because casting is like really important to her, just spinning around, de-aggroing, getting damage done, all of that fun stuff. And then you also have the critical strike chance, which will make it more likely for you to crit with your Executioner, which already makes your abilities crit. So it's a really good option to build. Usually you go for some survivability on Katarina. I prefer to put Edge of Night on her. Some people don't. Some people, like, you know, it's up for debate on whether or not it's really important. I think it's essential, so I usually prioritize Hand of Justice, Edge of Night, and then my last item is the item that I try and figure out afterwards. Edge of Night makes it so that if she jumps in the backline, which she often does, if she gets aggroed or if people start targeting her, she can de-aggro, and that usually gives her a second lease at life, which often will win you the round or give you a good option to win the round. Last item could be flexible. Usually you want to give some sort of crit item. So, you know, technically Nashor's is a crit item because it's, you know, even though it's a bow and a belt and it generates mana, it still gives you a lot of crit. So, you know, go figure, right? That's modern TFT. Doesn't make any sense, but sure. Either way, Nashor's Tooth, really good on her because she likes to cast. Casting for her is really important, and she has a low mana threshold, so you typically just want her to spin around and spin around and spin around, and Nashor's helps her to do that. Now, the thing about Nashor's is that you usually have to have a good amount of damage on the Katarina in order for Nashor's to actually be good, because this Katarina might just hit like a wet noodle and then not actually kill any tanks, and then she can get stuck really easily. So a lot of times, if you have a spot for Nashor's, it'll make sense. I'll talk about the fruits, which will really bring out that potential. But a lot of times, other damage or base AP items are fine. So, you know, I will go like a Strikers in certain times, whatever you can muster up. Either a crit glove item to make the crits more consistent, or like a raw, really powerful damage item will also work out fine. One important thing to note is that Katarina also has really good scaling with many of the different Radiant items. Radiant Hand of Justice is broken on her. Radiant Nashers is broken on her. Additionally, Ornn artifacts are broken on her. She has many win conditions. Zonya's, Dawn Core, I think even Wit's End, but this one I'm a little bit less certain of, so be careful. Don't take my word for it just yet. Double check before you check it out. But normally it's Dawn Core in this one, right? Because she has so many win conditions, as a reroll line, it's very easy for you to just hit an augment, rip it, and just like hit a win condition, right? If you hit Radiant Refractor, and it's a prismatic lobby, all of a sudden you're in a game-winning spot because Radiant Hodge is so broken on her, or Radiant Nashers is so broken on her. If you hit an Ornn artifact, there are so many that are good hits on this board, either tank ones for your tanks or one of the Katarina ones. So this comp, especially, even though it's a reroll, has these insane win-out potentials out of nowhere. You can just like stumble into a win-out potential, and not to mention the Katarina can scam a lot of fights. If you fight an opponent that doesn't position well for you, the Katarina could just kill shit randomly and then you just win. So, you know, it's one of those comps that's very easy to top 4 with, which makes it really popular because it's also a reroll that's very consistent. So now, in terms of fruits, I've been laying off it a little bit, but I like to say it at the end of the comp. So 2 things with fruits. First off, with Katarina, you usually want a scaling fruit, which means that the main condition for playing Katarina is hitting Katarinas early. So usually if you hit a Katarina on stage 2, that's usually when you decide if you're playing Katarina. Max Arcana, or Max Arcana, however you want to say it, is usually one of the better fruits for her. This one just gives you a lot of ability power. So with the Katarina, especially if you build her, like, you know, Executioner and like regular damage items and healing and stuff, at one point you can just hit a critical mass by just getting infinite AP from this, and then, like, you know, you have crit, so your ults are just going to do a shit ton of damage no matter what. Pair it with like a damage amp item, like I was saying, you're just hitting like a truck constantly, right? The other thing is that this is kind of like, you know, really good for scaling if you're in a good spot for it. However, if you're not in a good spot for it, it might be a little bit awkward. They just nerfed it, so it's less ability power, but I would still consider it to be one of the most important, or one of the conditions for playing Katarina. The other scaling fruit that you used to see a lot on her, but it's actually less favorable compared to Max Arcana, just because of the way they nerfed it, over 9,000. Now this one got a lot of nerfs, but there's a couple things that are really important with over 9,000. Obviously you can still get AP drops, which is really good. Attack speed is also pretty good. The tank stats are fine because she's in the front line, so making her live longer, these can help out a little bit. But the mana is the one that's broken. If you high roll with over 9,000, it is way better than Max Arcana because you can get the mana gen. The mana gen is incredible because basically Katarina, being able to cast more frequently, it's a huge difference. So 1 mana or even 2 mana or even 3 or 4, if you hit those with over 9,000, it makes a noticeable difference because the Katarina will spin, she'll do more damage, she'll be less targeting. Like, casting on her is really important. So much so that a lot of the main win conditions, aside from this, are usually ones that are related to casting, right? That's why Radiant Nashers is really good, or that's why regular Nashers is also good on her, right? The casting is really important. Now, obviously, if you don't high roll your damage on your power-ups really well, or you don't scale really well, that's what I was saying why sometimes I don't do Nashers and I'll put another damage item on her, because a lot of times if you get griefed by the scaling, then she might not have enough damage to support the scaling and stuff like that. But either way, it's really important, right? Even augments, like there's the augment Hero 101 that gives mana gen, I think, and or one of the augments that is Battle Academia specific gives mana gen to the units, right? That's why Rise is so important and Prodigy is so important, because the mana gen, right? So that's why over 9,000 could be good as well, but usually you pick whichever scaling one you hit, and then if over 9,000, it has like higher cap but like way riskier because you can low roll on it, and then Max Arcana is just super consistent. So like 9 out of 10 times Max Arcana will feel like it's better, but sometimes over 9,000 could reach like a higher cap, so like either is fine basically. In terms of Rakan, what you usually end up going for Rakan, now this might be different this patch, but I don't think it is so far. It seems like it's still fine, is Unstoppable. Let me just, sorry, I'm having trouble typing. Unstoppable. This used to be the old one. They just nerfed it. So it gives only 100 health now, and it stuns for only 0.75. So I think it's a lot worse on the current patch, but Unstoppable is really good for Rakan. Why is that? Well, basically with Katarina, she only has a 2 hex jump range, right? She'll blink to the lowest health enemy within 2 hexes. So a lot of times what you're going to do with Katarina is you'll do some wacky ass positioning, something like this, where you're trying to isolate the frontline units, and then Rakan with Unstoppable basically will dash deep into the lines, which gives the Katarina a way to snipe the backline, right? It gives her a path to the backline, right? There's even some modern positionings that people are starting to experiment with, where they're just like doing this, and then Unstoppable jumps up all the way here, and then the enemies walk up a little bit, and it makes the Katarina able to jump to this side or this side, right? Because like if you put all your units here and Rakan jumps the wrong way, then these backline units don't have a target, so they'll walk up a little bit, right? Let's just put like a target dummy or like a Zyra or something, right? Like this unit, I'm struggling, sorry. This unit might walk up a little bit, and then the Katarina has an easier time jumping here. You know what I mean? Like, there's all sorts of wacky things, but a lot of it is based on the fact that you need Unstoppable on Rakan. That's why I think it's still really good. Now, obviously, you can go for another tank fruit. You can go for other builds. You don't have to play like this. You don't have to do this. It really depends on what your opponent is doing. You have to react to it, but I just want to give you, like, a heads up. That's usually how it's played. Obviously, it's an old comp. I talked about it a lot, so you guys probably already know this. Anyways, next comp to talk about. This is going to be Malzahar with heavyweights. So Malzahar got an indirect kind of nerf. The main nerf that he got is that his damage used to be bugged, that it did more damage than intended. I don't know if it was consistent or if it was only sometimes. They made it seem like in the patch notes it was only sometimes. Either way, he seems fine. Stats and like boards that I've seen play with him, he seems like he's still equally as good, if not like around the same as before, maybe a little bit worse. So this comp is still really good because it was a really popular comp last patch, and alternatively, it didn't really get any nerfs besides the Malzahar bug fix. So if that bug wasn't so important to the way this comp worked, doesn't seem like it's that bad. That's what I would say. But anyways, you play 6 heavyweight. 6 heavyweight synergizes as well because you get to play the Zac for Wraith. And then basically you have your frontline damage dealer, which is going to be your Darius. He's going to do like one-shotting and like chewing through tanks. And then you have Malzahar that does dot damage over time and slowly applies damage to every other unit on the board. So what you usually want to do is pair the two together, because basically Malzahar will apply his infection to everybody. Darius will kill a unit. The infection will spread and will stack on the units because they will die from the Darius, which will then make them take more dot damage, which will then make it easier for Darius to kill a unit, and then the whole board collapses because everybody has like triple effects of Malzahar stacking on each other, and they all just kind of die. Basically, the comp stalls out long enough for Darius and Malzahar to kill everything. So usually what you're doing is you're rolling on 7, you're going for Malzahar 3 and Darius 3. Sometimes you even go for Jace 3. With Malzahar, usually casting items are better. Blue buff, something like a Jewel Gauntlet and a Rabadon's works well because you get some base AP as well as some crit. His items are really flexible. You can build lots of different items on him, but usually you'd go for the casting type build that looks something like this. And then Darius, you can get, if in certain cases, if you get Supreme Cell active, he has damage amp. So usually I like to have crit with him. But with heavyweights, belt items, Derricks, like all of these types of items are going to be good on Darius and the like. Even a Bloodthirster is going to be fine because it has a scaling shield that works with health, so they have a lot of HP. You have lots of flexibility in terms of the items. So this comp, one of the comps where you have lots of different options for builds. Now, one of the things that makes this board really strong and have a lot of options for build is the fact that Malzahar gets a particular power-up called Noxious. Sorry, I can't spell again. Noxious Trap. So Noxious Trap, burn, wound, shred, sunder. Basically, you get anti-heal effects, you get shredding and sundering. It's not 30%, so it's not fully optimized, but it is definitely enough. What this does is it makes it so you don't have to build a shred item. You don't have to build a sunder item. So if you look at your Darius, you don't have to build an item to reduce armor. You don't have to build an item to reduce, what's it called? Magic resist, and you don't need to build an item to anti-heal. You basically get all of those effects for one with a wonderful fruit that they added to the game. So basically what you do is you get this on Malzahar, and now you can focus on pure damage. You can focus on triple damage items here. You can focus on triple damage items here. You can focus on tank items for Poppy. You can focus for extra items here. It allows you to optimize your items in a meaningful way. Now, obviously, you could build some of those utility items, but you just don't have to do it if you just aim to hit Noxious Trap. Now, obviously, if you miss on Noxious Trap, that's a big uh-oh scenario, but that's the way set 15 is played. You kind of have to angle towards a fruit and hope that you hit the right fruit because it influences a lot of what items you're building. Before, I believe on the current patch, unless it didn't go through, they said that Malzahar no longer gets Mage. This used to be his other option for a lot of damage. Basically, by Malzahar casting twice, he would basically do a shit ton of damage. In the patch notes, they said they got rid of it on Malzahar, so I don't think it's possible to hit on him anymore. But of course, you can, if you hit it, if it's bugged and you see it, then obviously this is one of his best damage fruits. The other option for Malzahar is obviously Max Arcana. If you get him early, he hits every unit on the board, so he's going to participate in every takedown. He can actually scale this very efficiently, especially if you start from a strong early game. So this is a very good option that at that point, like, you know, you don't care about Noxus Trap. You can just build the Shred Sunder anti-heal, and you'll just have so much damage from Max Arcana that you'll basically be able to chew through everything very easily. On Darius, you have lots of things. Thrill Seeker is pretty good, that you heal max health, but obviously any sort of like melee related thing is going to be good for the Darius in any of these builds, so just keep that in mind. But usually the Malzahar version, there used to be other versions with flex with Crystal Gambit. I think these lines are a lot worse because the Crystal Gambit 5 cash outs got a lot of the stuff that made them really good removed, so I wouldn't necessarily play those lines, excuse me. I would play towards this version, and I think this is a pretty reliable 3-cost reroll. Next, I don't want to give anybody trauma, but I think Janna Mentor is actually okay on this patch. If I had to pick another reroll line, this is the one that I think I would angle. Basically, this is based on the fruit Veteran on Janna. So Veteran, basically makes it so that Janna is a mentor unit and she gains a bunch of ability power. With Janna, you usually build her with a crit item and a blue buff for casting. Blue buff is really essential because it helps her to do so much extra damage. But basically, blue buff, JG, last item pretty flexible, but a lot of times you go Giant Slayer because it's a really broken item. I talk about it a lot in set 15. You can't really go wrong making Giant Slayer with pretty much any comp that you want to run. With the Janna, you basically play 4 Mentor. You can fit in Mighty Mech really easily on later levels, and eventually you want to have the Rise in. Strategist gives her a bunch of damage amp, so basically with the crit and the damage amp and the bunch of AP that she gets from Veteran, she hits like a truck, and it's a really reliable front line. Really reliable back line. Because of your front line, Kabuko with 4 Mentor basically has a massive stun that makes him absolutely obnoxious. So the thing that this comp used to be really broken with was that there was a power up called Best Defense, which you would then go for on Kabuko, which was broken because you would just do a bunch of extra damage. This one got nerfed so much now, I think it's only 100% of the shield's value, so I'm not sure if it's good on Kabuko yet. We'll have to see as the set progresses or the patch progresses, but Kabuko, you usually just go for any tank thing on him now. You don't have to, I don't think you have to go the full shield build. This is how you used to play the comp. You would build all shielding items and then go best defense, and this guy would hit like a nuke. But I don't think you do that anymore because the damage got nerfed so much that it's not as consistent. You can just go for any tank items and just rely on the stun from the Kabuko to make this board really strong. Now, this board got a lot of nerfs to both Kabuko and like that whole part of the comp. Janna herself didn't really get any nerfs, which is why I think this comp is fine. Additionally, something that's always understated with this comp is how stable and strong it is on stage 3 in particular, right? Or sorry, on stage 3/4, like early in the game before you hit your 3-star units. Basically, with Janna, you can very easily hit 4 Mentor, which gives all of your units a really big upgrade. What that means is that on a low level, you can very easily, when rolling for your units, play around 4 Mentor, right? Janna will count as a Mentor, so it'll be 4 Mentor, and then you can easily streak. And that's what makes it really strong. Oops, sorry. When you are playing this comp, if you're not win streaking on stage 3, if you're not being strong early game, the comp is significantly worse. This was true even last patch when Janna was broken. Now, this Janna comp is not broken. I don't think it's the best comp in the game. It might not even be the best reroll in the game because Katarina probably is that. But the thing about this comp that you have to understand is that you want to hit that 4 Mentor threshold in your mid game and do really well for many of those early game rounds. That's where this comp really shines, because there's going to be few comps that can deal with the Kabuko sending a giant stun across the entire board. Now, obviously, Kabuko got nerfed. He casts less frequently. He got a mana nerf as well as part of like the nerfs that happened to this comp. But the 4 Mentor bonus is still going to be really stable and strong in your stage 3, or at least in my opinion, in your stage 3, which is what does a lot of the heavy lifting for this comp. Now, is this comp an instant win, go first, win the game for free anymore? No, that was last patch. It got some nerfs, but I think it's still going to be a reliable reroll line so long as you play it from a proper spot where you're actually rerolling the units from having the units. In terms of other rerolls, there are lots of rerolls. This is like the little catch-all moment of the video. There are so many different comps you can play. But a lot of them are very conditional. The ones I showed you have the least conditions or have the best win conditions in my opinion. So those are the rerolls that I focused on explaining. Of course, Xayah is a lot better this patch because her whole kit basically got buffed. Guinsoo got a good buff and Kraken got a huge buff. So now Xayah just can pump out a lot more damage a lot more easily. So Xayah reroll with 6 Bastion, you basically play Xayah and 6 Bastions. This reroll line, it's not like a broken comp by any means, but it is a very consistent top 4 if you play it from a good spot in my opinion. So you can just farm like, you know, low elo gains like that, like, you know, like 10 LP, 10 LP, 10 LP, just farming fourths. So this is a great out if you have a good spot for it because it's really reliable and quite strong. Kog'Maw as well, there's also Smolder in certain cases which can be good as well, but Kog'Maw in particular has a lot of win condition with artifacts. If you hit any of the artifacts that are good, right, Radiant Shojin, broken on Kog'Maw. If you hit any of the artifacts that are good on him, Dawn Core, what's it called, the other thing, Static Shiv, I want to show you all of them. Dawn Core, I'll just go in order. Flicker Blades is broken on him. Lichbane is broken on him. Static Shiv is broken on him. And then the other one's potentially broken on him. Right? All of these put you in a really good spot. So if you rip an artifact and you see something that works with Kog'Maw, you can have a really good Kog'Maw spot. Crew reroll. Also really strong. Has a really high cap, but it's a very risky comp. But if you make it to Twisted Fate and you 3-star everybody, it can be a very easy win or a very easy top 4. Lastly, this comp I'm not unsure about, because I haven't tested out myself personally, but Gangplank, this was this would have worked last patch. It's not that it got any direct buffs this patch in general, but basically the way that you use it, it's kind of like a little bit of a very specific scam bullshitty comp. But basically you go Gangplank with range rapid fire cannon. So it basically gives him like the old stretchy arms ability where he slowly like increases his range, and you actually build him with a Shojin. And what you're supposed to do is you go gather force on him. This was the old thing that was broken on Jinx. And basically, with attack speed and playing vertical duelist, this Gangplank with the Shojin and the RFC will gain like infinite AD by just casting a bunch with gather force, and then it'll just like one tap everybody and just win the game very easily. So it's extremely, extremely broken with RFC and Shojin. So you might be asking me, but Fenrir, why is there a Kale here? And I saw some shit that I didn't like on the weekend, but I saw some really specific stuff on some regional scrims that I think makes this comp really good if you're playing like Gangplank reroll. You basically Gangplank 3-star with all the duelists. You play 6 duelist Gangplank, then you put in some Mighty Mechs. But there's this Kale, and people were just solo frontlining Kale and sacking her. And you know what they were doing? Fury Break. So this Fury Break, if it's like really complicated and it's one of those bullshit fruits that nobody knows what this means until you actually like figure out a comp that specifically abuses it. But basically, you basically sack the Kale with Fury Break, and then it gives 300% attack speed to the Gangplank. So if you pair that with the Gangplank with the range and the Shojin, he basically just goes infinite and just like gains like 100 physical damage, right? He gains like all the AD from gather force. So it's like a specific interaction where this unit dies, he gains infinite attack speed, he just like pops off for 4 seconds, gains like an insane amount of AD, and then just starts one-tapping everybody. Now, the reason I put this comp here with a big question mark is that I don't know if it's playable without the RFC. I've seen some people try it and have some success with it. If it's okay without RFC, then it will be like a standard reroll you guys can play whenever. But I think right now it's artifact locked, in my opinion. But we'll see. I'll keep tabs on it. If it's really popular, I'll bring it up in the next time I do this updated video on like Monday, right? So like over the weekend, I'll scout it out. I'll see what's up, and then I'll let you guys know next time I do a best comps video. But that's just for the reroll lines. Now, we talked about all of the reroll lines. Let's talk a little bit about 4-cost lines. In my opinion, the 4-cost lines, if you have a good spot for any of them, you can play them. I want to make that very clear. Alright, if you can play Star Guardian, it's maybe possible. Yuumi, it's probably possible. Akali, it's probably possible. Soul Fighter, it's probably possible. Right, all of these comps, there's times where you can play them. Of course, right? If you high roll into them, if you play with a lot of tempo, they're relatively good. However, I think that the 5 costs, after repeated buffs to multiple of the 5-cost units are so overbearingly powerful that you usually want to angle towards playing any of the 5 costs in particular. So a lot of the lines that you would be playing, they should be treated more as like an intermediate step until you get to the 5 cost, which is the main thing that you want to be carrying with or doing a lot of the damage. So a lot of the 4-cost lines for that reason feel a little bit temperamental or feel a little bit worse. One of the 4-cost lines that you could angle towards now is this comp, where this is an older style comp where Volibear used to be super meta, but basically you're playing Volibear with Juggernauts and Soul Fighters, and it's kind of like a board that makes use of Juggernaut and Edgelord and Luchador. You can play it similarly by dropping the Soul Fighters, and you can just play 4 Luchador, for like Juggernauts and Bastions. You can easily play a bunch of Edgelords. There's a lot of flex lines in it, which we'll talk about after. But if we're focused on like a level 8 comp that works pretty well, it's basically this, and then you're just not playing the 5 cost, and you're trying to find like either an extra Juggernaut to play, or you're trying to find like an extra Luchador, or drop the Luchadors and play more Soul Fighters. So a little bit flexibility on level 8. With this, you're primarily carrying Volibear. With Volibear, I think the best set of items is just a crit build. You know, he also scales really well with attack speed. I've seen Kraken Volibear do really well, but Hodge, i.e. just crit glove healing and crit glove damage, works really well on him. And then last item, Giant Slayer damage amp, as well as some extra stats could work out really well. Of course, he gets a little bit of Omnivamp from Edgelord, and he also gets some AD from Edgelord, so the crit scaling works really well with his kit, because he'll do a lot of damage and also heal a bunch, which makes him a bit of a nuisance. Obviously, this comp cap's really high, because you're basically making use of Braum and Lee Sin Juggernaut, which are 2 of the stronger 5 costs in the game, which gives you a really high cap potential for it. It also makes use of some other units that you can stabilize around, like Samira with extra AD items, or Set with extra tank items. So this is a great way to just kind of play an intermediate level 8 board, as well as have something that does have the potential to cap really high if you don't want to reinvest in your board or sell a bunch of your board in order to cap out a little bit differently. I will make a note though, we will talk a lot more about Volibear in a later comp, because I'm going to talk about some Fast 9 Volibear options as well. So sit tight, don't worry about it. With Volibear, I think the best option is Serious Slam. Serious Slam just makes it so he does a lot of damage whenever he's re-aggroing on a new unit. It makes it a lot easier for him to kill, and also the stun is pretty good. So he just goes around, he stuns, and he does the extra damage. So I really like this on Volibear. It's usually what I end up going for, but whatever fits your build can work out well. There's times that I just take attack speed on him. There's times that I take just Omnivamp. There's times that I take damage amp, right? Whatever fruit makes sense could also work, because Volibear is really flexible, especially with his itemizations, right? I showed you one version, but other melee items and attack speed items can also work well on him. This is just one that I think will perform a little bit better. He just has a really diverse kit, right? Because he gains attack speed, Omnivamp, and CC immunity with his active. So you get actually a lot of usable stats that can scale really well with different builds, right? Because if you have a bunch of attack speed, if you have the Omnivamp already, if you have CC immunity, you don't have to worry about making CC immunity. You don't have to worry about making Omnivamp as much. You don't have to worry about attack speed as much. So it gives you like a lot of open options for damage amp, or sorry, for other damage scaling items and damage scaling builds with other items in the game, right? Sometimes I even go like Giga Drain Tank Volibear, and I just go like double Omnivamp and Asterix. I just watch them try and kill it. You know what I mean? It's like, it's pretty flexible unit. Anyways, in terms of other comps, we're going to start talking about the level 9 comps. I usually don't like to talk too much about level 9 comps, because I feel like, especially as a beginner player, it's a bad habit to just like try and not play the game and just try and fast 9. But that's the way the set kind of played out. That's the way the set's been like balanced and built around right now. So I would be lying if I didn't tell you that Fast 9 is a really important thing to be able to do on the current patch. And it's something that I'm doing a lot in my current games, which I'll also talk about a little bit after. One of the most reliable and strong comps in the game, 7 Mighty Mech. Basically, this comp is a Yone check. You can either try and play it as a Fast 9 comp to make it to level 9 to hit the Yone. You could roll on level 8 and just cross your fingers that you hit a Yone. It's a degenerate comp. It just is what it is. But it's really good if you play it from a good spot, obviously. If you're playing it from ahead, or if you're playing it that you can make it to level 9 to guarantee the Yone, this is probably one of the highest cap comps in the game. The idea is that with 7 Mighty Mech, your mech becomes a Giga carry. So your mech does most of the damage and does everything. And basically what you're going to do is you're going to pair this with a particular power-up called Mech Pilot. Mech Pilot makes it so your mech gets a bunch of the stats from your mech units, but additionally, the mech benefits from the pilot's trait if you have 2 Mighty Mech in. And they changed this a while ago so that if you have Mech Pilot on one unit, you will always be offered Mech Pilot on the other unit. So basically what you can do is you can instantly give the Mighty Mech synergies that work with the rest of your board. So in the past, I'm going to show you 2 different options, but in the past, the main way people used to do this is you would play 7 Mighty Mech and then a Rise. And then basically what you would do is you would Mech Pilot. I'm going to put them closer to the mech just so it's a little... I'll put everything in the back line, and then I'll just put the Mech Pilot units here so it's easier to see. This isn't like a positioning guide. This is just to show you for easy visual clarity. Basically, Rise activates Strategist for Jarvan and also activates Executioner for Senna. By doing this, the Mech Pilot eats these 2 units and then gets the Sorcerer trait active and Executioner trait active. So basically the mech can have crits on his ult, and the mech will also get the AP from Sork, which is really strong. And basically because he scales off of the stats of these units, you basically spam a bunch of Rabadons, you know, if you have the Prismatic Augment, or you would spam a bunch of TGs just so you get a bunch of efficient items on him, and they would eat these 2 units, boom, boom, and he would gain a bunch of stats, and the mech does all the damage and does all the work for you. That was the old way to play it. Now, what I usually do is I go for Aatrox. Aatrox gives these 2 traits. The crit, I feel like it doesn't matter that much. So a lot of times I'll play this board and I'll actually play like either an Udyr, or I'll play like Udyr plus a heavyweight when I get a level up, so any heavyweight. Heavyweight and Juggernaut on the mech makes this thing fucking unkillable. And then usually I'll go Sork, sometimes I go Executioner, it depends on my items and how I kind of play my board out. But I actually go for this, and you just eat all of these traits instead, and this mech just becomes unkillable, and it helps out a lot. This was something that kind of evolved when they nerfed 7 Mighty Mech to do less damage, so it feels like he's less front-loaded on one-tapping with the Executioner trait, and now you really want him to just get multiple casts off to be able to clean sweep the board. So the Juggernaut and Heavyweight matters a lot in just making this guy like unkillable, basically. So that's what I usually do. So now I fruit the Aatrox, and then I go for that. When you're digging for fruits, here's a little bit of a guide. A lot of times what you'll see is people digging for fruits on Jarvan. So this is like a simulated bench. This is the board that I'm playing. A lot of times the easiest unit to hit it on, if you're just looking for a raw unit, I think is either Lucian or Gangplank. I'm not sure about Gangplank, but usually you go for one of these 2 units. But basically, if you want to be super optimal in finding the Mech Pilot trait or the Mech Pilot fruit, what you can do is you basically rip a fruit. Like this takes a lot of setup, so it might be a little bit confusing. So this is more for like advanced like optimizations. You can skip this part if you're just like looking for like how to play the comp type of beat. So basically what you'll do is you'll take one of your tanks bench. By fruiting that tank unit on your bench, you can eat up a tank slot that wouldn't be on the Jarvan, and the Jarvan already has the best chance of seeing Mech Pilot. So basically what you do is you use a power up on Swain, for example. You take something like Standalone. A lot of these tank ones, I think Standalone and some of the other ones, you cannot hit multiple of. So if you take this and you put Standalone on the Swain, it kind of blocks out Standalone on the Jarvan. If you want to know more, you can check out Little Buddy Bot. There's like a little bit more tech involved if you want to know the actual specifics of it. But basically, if you use a tank fruit on a unit already, then the game kind of says, I don't want another tank fruit on this guy, and you have a greater chance of hitting the Mech Pilot. So then you would basically search for Mech Pilot on Jarvan, right, which is very easy because you basically filtered out some of the fruits, and he already has a low fruit pool that makes so you can't hit the other ones, and then you would just transfer it after, because once you have one Mech Pilot, then you can spread the Mech Pilot to your actual units, because if you use your other fruit now, you sell the Swain, this guy gets Mech Pilot, you use a fruit remover, boom, you remove the fruit, and then you put on another mech unit that you want to eat, let's say the Aatrox in my example, right? You remove this, and then you put on the Aatrox, then because this guy's Mech Pilot, this guy always gets Mech Pilot, and that's how you get your Mech Pilot, your 2 Mech Pilot, right? Just a little, like, whatever, for fun. Board also caps higher-bound legendaries. You can play easily Yone 2 with some items, and you can also play around like other 5 costs, like Lee Sin could fit in on the board really well as a Juggernaut, right? You can replace this Udyr and play a board like this with a Lee Sin 2-star, really strong, really powerful, really great. This board also has the tech. If you have extra things like Flexible, for example, or other ways of getting a bunch of spatulas, loot subscription, for example, every single what's it called? Every single emblem that you put on these units, when the mech inherits them, they inherit the traits, but they also inherit the emblem traits. So basically, if you have infinite amount of emblems, you can make a very flexible board where your mech becomes a giga juicer that just gets value from all the emblems. It basically has like 100 traits active, right? So this is really important. If you have a bunch of emblems, this is a really good comp that you can just feed emblems into the mech and power up the mech exponentially, right? Luchador and Wraith are two of the really, really strong win condition ones for this guy, but of course, like, you need to have the traits active as well, so then your board has to be a little bit more flexible in order for that to work out. In terms of other items, a lot of times you put utility items on Karma. Karma is a great secondary damage dealer. So, like, if you can also build, like, AP Karma in the back line. Sorks, you usually go crit and damage amp. But you can also build her with some utility items. The mech does a decent chunk of both AP and AD. So, Shred and Sunder also is pretty important. As well as giving some sort of anti-heal as well, which you can put on any of the units in your back line. Safe from despair, and then obviously you can itemize the other units as well. Finally, I have two other 5-cost comps to talk about. The main ones that you usually end up going for when you're going for like a giga win streak is usually some sort of flexible TF board, right? A lot of times it's going to be Twisted Fate with Juggernaut, or it's going to be Twisted Fate with Bastions. So in terms of which one is better, I think they're both fine. You usually just want to try and flex between whatever units you have or whatever front line you have. Let's talk about Juggernauts first. A lot of times with Juggernaut, you're playing Twisted Fate in the back line, Zyra in the back line, and Lee Sin in the front line. These are going to be your three main carries. AP items can go on Zyra, but usually you just want her to cast a bunch, so just giving her mana items is really important. Twisted Fate scales really well with attack speed. Gwinsu got buffed, so Gwinsu's pretty good, but you can go Gwinsu Kraken, you know, to give him like that instant, that juicy scaling. You can just build them with pure bow items as well, but Twisted Fate is really good in these boards because you basically can just rely on making pure damage items. The reason Twisted Fate's so popular, once again, we have this fuck-ass fruit, I don't know how else to describe it, Noxious Trap, right? Burn, Wound, Shred, Sunder. You don't have to build these items. You basically just go for this on Twisted Fate. It's almost essential, but it allows you to optimize your board a lot better. The main carry with this comp, if you want like explosive damage, Twisted Fate can scale really well and do a lot of damage, and also with Noxious Trap spreads that damage to the whole board. But obviously Lee Sin works really well with a variety of melee style items. So you can easily build them like as a drain tanky kind of build, but a lot of times you can even build them with crit. Right, having him just one-tap units, he does so much damage as a Juggernaut Lee Sin, it is insane. So you just build him with like really big damage items, and then with 6 Juggernaut, he's gonna be hard to kill, and he just kills everything. Obviously, Braum, you can also put mana gen items on him, as well as melee items, because the Braum could also be another carry. But these are the comps that you usually end up playing around. If you're trying to optimize your boards, you usually pivot or play into something like this late game because of how broken Lee Sin is. As well, Twisted Fate has scaling, so if you're able to fast 9 or make it to level 9 very fast, you might be able to just win out based on Twisted Fate dropping you extra stuff because of his Rogue Captain ability. Now, the Juggernaut version, I think, is a little bit... like, it obviously has a really high cap because you're playing very easily around Lee Sin, but I think that it's a little bit harder to, like, more like you know, like, you don't have flexibility as much as some of the other comps. One of the comps that's really flexible is this one, right? The Bastion version. With the Bastion version, you have a lot more flexibility on which units you can interchange into your backline. The main thing that you usually see now is actually Seraphine. So Seraphine, a lot of times you give her some sort of mana generation, and you give her like actual like damage items. She has really good like scaling in terms of like the Bastion synergy. Like, she gets some extra armor, which now translates to some more damage. Twisted Fate, you can build the same way. You always go Noxious Trap on Twisted Fate. It's like an essential part of the kit. Zyra, obviously, mana generation is good because you can get her to cast a bunch and activate her fruits, or activate her plants and all of that bonus fun stuff. But the Seraphine actually drops nukes. She does a lot of damage. And basically what you go for her, what fruit you go for her is Mage, if you didn't know. You go Mage on Seraphine. This one's really important. I don't think other Seraphine fruits are really good. This one makes it so she casts twice. She doesn't cast very frequently, so even though her cast has a big wind up, you might think Mage isn't that great, but the chances of her getting to another cast are so not uncommon that usually what you do here is you just go for the Mage, and then she just drops 2 nukes and usually one-taps the entire board. That's like the whole option. If she doesn't one-tap the board, Twisted Fate will clean up after. But I mentioned the Bastion board is really flexible. Because of the synergies with Bastion, you can actually play a lot of different units in between, even if you don't hit all of these 5 costs. So I'll put these 2 specifically, but you have the free space to basically find any 5 cost, right? Gwen can fit in nicely. Lee Sin you can always play, who cares? Yone can also fit in pretty nicely, right? Like, you have lots of options of other 5 costs, which makes it easier to stabilize. Especially if you're rolling on level 8. If you're rolling on level 8, you can stabilize around a Gwen with 6 Bastion. If you're rolling on level 8, you can stabilize around a Seraphine. You can stabilize around a Twisted Fate. You can stabilize around a Lee Sin, right? It doesn't really matter because you actually have a lot of easy units that you can just slot in. The Juggernaut version is a lot harder, right? Because like Seraphine, she doesn't even get Star Guardian with this board. So it's really hard to like kind of just slot her in for fun, right? Like you can, like obviously she'll still do a lot of damage, but the Juggernaut version is a little bit more focused is what I would say. So if you're playing the Juggernaut version, you have to really want to hit the Lee Sin because it might be really awkward. Bastion, you can kind of flex and play a lot of different stuff. If we go back to what we were talking about with Volibear and these setups, Volibear is a great way to kind of play around some of these boards. Because Volibear, you can basically just build very flexible items on him, right? You can even put like some of the Krakens or attack speed kind of items. You can build like your full crit and stuff. And then you can easily just slot in this Volibear with a Bastion board because you get Edgelord activated for free. If you have a Braum, you obviously get Luchador and Edgelord active for free. If you're playing on a Juggernaut board, you can very easily slot him in because you have the Mundo, right? In all of these boards, you can very easily see a Volibear fitting in, which allows you to have something to roll for on level 8. A lot of times you can roll for your 6 frontline synergy and a Volibear 2-star and use that as a stepping stone to make it to level 9, from which you will then rearrange your items and play around the 5 costs in your game. This allows you to have a certain flexibility. It also allows you to play a board like this and then flex into a Juggernaut board, right? You don't have to play the Edgelords. You can drop these units, right? You can drop some of these useless units, right? And you can play this board, but you can just like switch into one of these other optimized 5 cost boards that play more of the 5 costs. There's lots of flexibility, lots of options, and that's where Volibear really shines in the current patch, in my opinion. This is something that's not even uncommon in previous patches. If you would like to, you can check out my gaming channel where I post gameplay. I'm a little bit of a TF merchant these days, just playing Twisted Fate every game. But even last week, this is 8 days ago on the last patch, I did the exact thing that I'm talking about, right? And I do it on this patch as well, right? I played Volibear. Now, this game was a little bit different because I hit Volibear 3, but I basically flexed. I played a bunch of Bastions, right? And then I played Volibear. I rolled on level 8. I stabilized. I obviously high rolled a Twisted Fate, which made things a lot easier for me. But then I used that as a stepping stone to make it to level 9. I was really strong for most of the game, and then I won out because I hit Volibear 3. This is when Volibear kind of sucked, right? Last patch, Volibear wasn't particularly great. What I'm saying is, this patch, Volibear's a lot better. So there's like, obviously, like things you can do that puts you in a really good spot on the current patch with this. So you should always be open to those flex options out of those lines and not be super fixated. And that's, I think, going to be a really key part of getting to level 9 is playing around Volibear, especially if nobody in your lobby is doing so, right? This is like a good way to stabilize on level 8 and then push to those higher cap boards on level 9 and etc. The thing that makes this patch really bad, in my opinion, is that if you're playing a reroll or a fast 9 board, fast 9, you usually can't just decide that you're playing fast 9. You kind of have to be in a spot where either your entire lobby is not punishing you for going fast 9, or your entire lobby is also trying to fast 9 such that you're able to save HP in your mid game. Otherwise, the reroll lines are going to be way more consistent and way more viable. Now, obviously, I don't want you guys to look at me and I'm saying play reroll, don't fast 9, and then you're like, but Fenrir, you're fast 9ing all the time. I'm like, yes, because I'm looking at my lobby and they're not punishing me. That's what's happening. I look around and I'm winning rounds with double econ augment. Like, I have double econ augment and I'm win streaking. You know what I mean? And it's not because I'm high rolling. It's because like the entire board is open, trying to like fast 9 as well. But even though they don't have an econ augment, you know what I mean? It's like you still have to have a good fast 9 spot. So a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about in this video, even though I can say these are the quote unquote best comps you should play around, Mech and Twisted Fate flex of either Bastions or Juggernauts, please be careful. And obviously understand that if you don't have a spot to fast 9, it will be a struggle. A lot of the 4 cost comps will just feel like even though you hit, you might just go bot 4 anyways. That's kind of the way the set is. So you really have to put yourself in a good spot to fast 9, play aggressive, slam items early, make sure you have really good items on your Twisted Fate or your early game carries so that you can transition later. Don't worry about your perfect items on all of your units, right? I try and always preach that in my videos, right? Make sure that you're strong early, save the HP to give you the affordance to make it to level 9 so you can greed some econ, greed some gold in the later stage of the game, play around Crystal Gambit, get cash out, stuff like that. All that's going to be really important. So if you're not super flexible or not super able to like find those little nuances, it might feel like a rough patch, or it might feel like a really easy patch because like your lobby is like all glue eaters and nobody's really caring, and you just fast 9 and every single game you hit Twisted Fate and you win out for free, because that's what I'm doing. You know what I mean? Either or. Hopefully this was a fun, enjoyable video. Hopefully this gives you like a little bit of an idea of what to do around the set or the patch. Like I said, I'll do an updated version next week. And we'll see how it kind of plays out. Maybe some of the 4 cost lines will be a lot better, right? This Volibear line is pretty reliable on level 8, so this could be a really good 4 cost line to play. Hopefully it's not super contested in your lobbies, but a lot of the other ones you really need a good spot for because you really want the 5 cost, right? Sorks, you want 5 cost. Jinx, with some of the nerfs, especially the best defense and stuff, it feels like it lacks a little bit of damage, but it could obviously do really well if you hit everything ahead of time with Star Guardians. Soul Fighter, obviously it's relying on Volibear, so you might as well just play deeper into Volibear, which might work out better. Sorks, I said you need Gwen. Mech, you need the Mech, right? You need this guy. Ashe, I think, still kind of sucks. Akali could scam fights, but I don't think it's that viable against the 5 cost boards and the reroll line, so I think she's a little bit worse for wear now. But she's still viable if you have a good spot for her. Try your best. That's all I can say. But anyways, hopefully that was fun. Hopefully that was enjoyable. Have a great day, and see ya. Bye-bye.